Hi, welcome everybody to What's Next. I'm very happy to talk about the interaction between humans and machines today. And I'm here with Anouk. Hi Anouk.
Hi.
Hi. Unfortunately, I don't know you yet so much, but I met you about a month ago at an event, and it was very interesting for me to get to know you because for me, you are a good combination of what we would call the traditional HR disciplines, coming from a coaching and training background, and now I learned that you studied a subject called computer-human interaction, right? And I would like to know from you, okay, what actually made you study this subject? What's the motivation behind it? What actually is it?
Human-computer interaction is actually like it's research, but it's also design and a design approach, with the goal to create technologies or tools that use technology for working and private life. So it's always like enhancing private life or working life through technology, or also to not use technology if you find it's not necessary or it would decrease like engagement or happiness in that field.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll talk about the opportunities and limits, I think, later on. But first of all, I would like to mention one sentence which I found on your LinkedIn profile. It says, "I want to ensure that technology supports what people need, and not vice versa." Mm-hmm. Can you give us an example, maybe, why you come up with this sentence and what you like about it?
Yeah. So that's the gist of HCI actually, and that's what's important to me too. So it's for a long time, technological tools have been designed in a way that we actually adapt our behavior as humans to the machine. So for example, smartphones are a very clear example for that. We have them in our pocket all the time. We look at them all the time. And when we're at dinner with friends, we look at our smartphone. So it's sort of dictating our life. And that's not really what technology is supposed to do. It should help us and should support us being human, or take maybe tasks away from us that we can't do very well, or that we also don't want to do very well, or don't like to do. But it shouldn't form our life, or it's not the meaning of our life.
Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of people talk nowadays about robotics, automation, and machines taking control over humankind, which I think is a very interesting topic to talk about. Is a very there's for sure motivation behind it because so many things are going on. But I think our listeners are mostly interested also in understanding, how does your subject, computer-human interaction, actually relate to human resources, for example? Yeah. Maybe you can give us an example where you think HR has to be aware of this topic and get started with it.
Yeah. So I think there are several reasons why HR should think about HCI, or also user-centered design, which is the design approach that HCI uses. For once, it's going to be, so in the future, it'll be less human-human interaction, but more human-computer interaction in the workplace. So you sort of have to, as a human resource department, you have to think about that, because you're not going to be there for humans interacting with other humans. You actually have to support humans interacting with machines as well. So that's one part to it. Then the other part is that even further in the future, it might be that we are, humans are enhanced technologically. So then you're actually working with cyborg kind of people. So you do have to think about that. It sounds crazy, but
when do you think this will be?
I think sooner than maybe 2050 or something like that. And that's something you can already think about now, especially because it will be in steps, right? It won't be at one point. It starts with having a machine working very closely with you, which is not part of your body, but it's sort of your partner. That can already, smartphones are similar to something like that. And there can be tools that could come, like VR glasses or something, that are already there and that already enhance us as humans. So you have to think about that. And then also the user-centered design approach, which doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with technology as such. It's just an approach of creating things for users, for humans. And just taking that approach is really important too, because HR is a service, and it's a service to your customers, which are the people working in your company, and they are users of your system or of your tools or of your training methods. And applying that approach there is really good. Yeah. So Sky, for example, did something like that. They made changed into an agile process of developing their HR trainings, and they talked to the people in their company and said, what do you need, when do you need it? And now they're providing the learning on the spot when the people need it. And they also figured out which ways of learning are good. So they also found out one part is coaching, and you need to be face to face with the coach, and you can't have technology doing that. So that's one part of their training, which isn't technology based, but they use the user-centered design approach to find that out.
And in which, I mean, if you look at the value chain of a company, or especially of the HR departments, attracting people, hiring people, developing people, looking for successes, etc. Where do you think the friction nowadays is still too high? So where are the limits? But where do you also think we have to, not maybe in 5 years from now, but even today, rethink the way how people work in HR?
I don't quite understand the friction part. I'm just going to go ahead and say what I think I understood. So on the one hand, I think what will become very like a barrier, or at some point a very problematic, is the moment when people start realizing that they might become obsolete because their jobs will be taken by machines. So that's a point where HR sort of has a needs to address this problem, because even if people are still working there, if they are afraid that they will be replaced, then that's something HR needs to address. So that's one point. And also in the sense of recruiting, so that goes also in the direction of education, because you can recruit for specific jobs and specific skills, but you sort of already have to think about, well, they might not be important in 10 years. So if I hire somebody now, then maybe I have to retrain him so I can keep him in the company, because maybe like personality wise and the fit is really good, so I want to keep them. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't hire them. But then I have to reskill him in his hard skills sort of, and also reskill his soft skills, because that helps him adapt to the change. And that's something they can think of right now.
And I read an article a while ago, and actually when I talked to you before, I figured out that you also read about the same article, and was focusing on education, and it was also focusing on the German way to educate people. So looking at this global world we have nowadays, with all the trends flowing in, trends like automation, big data, machine learning, even 3D printing, etc. This will mean that people have to change, and they have to change probably very soon, and it's in the end all related to education. Maybe since probably not everybody read about this article, maybe you can quickly tell us a bit what this article is about, and how it relates to you.
So that's an article, or I mean there are a couple of these articles that and I've read a lot of them also in books like Yuval Noah Harari. That guy, everyone knows. He writes about that too, and it's about not teaching kids in school how to program or anything. I mean, that would be modern to teach them how to program, but that's also not the right way to go. So basic skills like reading and writing are good, because that teaches us to get information, to understand information. So that's good skills. That's very general skills. And then there are other general skills like, for example, in that article, he says it's about learning languages, because learning a language means changing perspective, changing your way of thinking, because languages, like natural human languages, have this whole mindset to them. So you're also learning something general. I mean, it's a specific skill, but it's also this general mindset. But then learning programming is very specific, and it doesn't really teach you. So there are two parts to it. Learning the programming language doesn't really teach you anything else. But then learning, for example, the logic behind programming and how computers work, that's very valuable, and that's also a general skill. So that's something you could be taught at school. And he also says in that article that I think his name is Wolf Lotter. And he says that it has to be sort of sexy and it has to be appealing to learn, because learning is what we have to do all our lives. And right now, the way, especially we can only talk about German school systems, but the way German school systems work, you're afraid of learning, you're afraid of failing, and you sort of have this like notion, school is like, well, for a lot of people at least, it's not the best place to be, and if so, then only to see your friends. So it doesn't make it very attractive to learn. Yeah.
But you talked a lot about skills, and I think skills is kind of what describes what people are capable of doing. And skills are also very hard to measure in terms of, especially if you have a lot of, for example, how could does Germany know what Germany can do? I don't think so, right? So the government. And I mean, there's one thing to figure out, okay, what's the direction, where do we need to go, and then there's the other thing, of course, what are the actions that need to be taken, right? And now translating this into a company, which is kind of a small economy in its own sense. We hear a lot of terms like future of work nowadays, or new work, or changes, new workplaces, etc. So let's maybe try a bit to translate what we've discussed about more on this meta level now into a more concrete and specific company level. Future of work. What's your opinion on this?
So I totally agree with the sense that we will have to like reskill every like couple of years, because we can't know right now what jobs will be automized. I mean, we do for some, but we don't for others, and in what way they will be automized. So maybe you still need human input, but more as like a translator between humans and machines. So those skills need to be developed, but then also we don't know where the technological where it's evolving to. So there will also be new jobs created. I do believe there will be new jobs created. I'm not sure if they will be enough, but there are definitely so we have to reskill for that. And the changes are coming faster and faster. So you can't just stop. You can't be like, well, I'm 40 now. I like reskilled once, but now I think I'm fine. No, probably you will have to reskill again. Yeah. And starting to get that mindset right now is really important, because otherwise it'll just hit you as a company. And on the positive side, if you start now, then I think you will have an advantage to your competitors as a company, because you will have the people, and that's also the what startups are doing and what like these fancy tech companies from San Francisco are doing, but what German companies are not really focusing on enough, I think, right now, to be like, well, our people are great, our people are they're staying at this company actually, but they're just like changing their jobs inside this company, but also they have our mindset, they have our values, they understand how everything's working, and they can just adapt. And we have this like net, sort of, we as HR people, like we are the net to like when they fall, we catch them and then we build them up again. And maybe they don't even have to fall
Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the half-life time of IT skills?
Oh God.
Take a guess.
I guess. Well, I mean, it depends, because like the basic skills, as I said, the logic behind that will stick, but like
the hard skills, let's say a specific technology,
maybe like 7 years.
No, it's much less.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have any scientific proof for it, but
what's your opinion?
It's 1 to 2 years.
1 to 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So looking at our surrounding, what people do, how they're being trained right now, and also everybody focusing now on digitalization, right? Getting people ready for the future, for this very digital future and the digital business models. I have a big fear that we are going to be left behind. Yeah. So for me, it's important that, I mean, I wouldn't see it unusual that people...
We, like, as Germany...
Yes. Yes, we as Germany. So hello, Germany, you need to wake up. need to change. I think what I know one guy. I heard about one guy. He was 55 years old, or he is 55 years old, and he's an engineer, and he went back to university for 2 years to kind of requalify himself, and it was with intrinsic motivation. And I think this is just one case. I don't think there are many of them, but I think this is a very, very future-proven approach how to skill people, how to develop them, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is that, I mean, it always comes down to the individuals. And a lot of people talking about this topic, they always say, well, it's the individual's thing to do something about it. And I totally agree with that. On the same hand, I'm very... Like I don't think there's a lot of I think we're quite deterministic, like the world is quite deterministic. So I think it's also nice if you have structures supporting you to do that. So that's where I think that HR departments, also the government of course, but like there are different levels, could take responsibility and just be like, okay, maybe it's not what we have to do, but we'll just do it because it will help us and it will help the people working with us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, my opinion is that companies, in order to survive, they need to be innovative, right?
Yeah.
And who drives innovation?
Yeah.
The people, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, HR for me is the catalyst of innovation because they are responsible for providing the right barriers so that everybody is free to develop and change into whatever they think is best for them and for the company, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's also the thing, this new type of learning that maybe will develop, hopefully will develop, that will make everyone like an entrepreneur. So yeah, if you make people in your company entrepreneurs, that will just help your company. I mean, of course, maybe someone will leave and do their own business, but if you support them, then actually also support them in developing their ideas further into products and services, then I think often people will stay because they have this like security network of like, okay, I'm earning my money, I have a job, I can provide for my family, but I can also start this new thing that I thought of. So I think it's if you're open for that as a company, then people will stay and develop it for you. Yeah.
No, it's not just your background that I found very interesting. It's also your current mission, because I learned that you just actually ask yourself the same question, that you decided for yourself that you're entrepreneurial. So you started a company this month, right? With some research in the past, since we did the same about 4.5-5 years ago. I know how hard this decision can be, but also how much fun it is once you take this decision. But I would like to know, what does your company do? What's your mission? And what do you want to tell, especially HR managers, but maybe everybody else in the world? How do you want to make the company, the world, a better place to be with your company?
Yeah. So the vision is to empower people to always add value to society, because a big thing in the next years will be not only that people lose their jobs and don't earn money and don't have any economic value, or also don't offer any economic value, but also that they don't have a social value. And so I'm focusing on helping people adapt to change by developing technological tools for that, but also getting people motivated to start their new projects. Because once you're stopped and you lost your job and you sort of never thought about doing anything else, and then you spend some weeks thinking about that, then you're in a hole, and then it's really difficult to get out of that again. So I hope this will help people get into the mindset before anything bad happens, and maybe nothing bad will ever happen, but then they'll just have this positive attitude of being an entrepreneur and being okay with changing things. Yeah.
Now, probably not everybody wants to become an entrepreneur, but still, what should they take away from our discussion now? I mean, let's not think about specific age groups, but really across the whole demography, across all jobs. What would you like to tell everybody out there? What should they think about themselves in order to maybe trigger this change, so that the friction between humans and machines that sometimes seems to be a huge barrier can be reduced? Or how can it actually be fun? Or what would be a typical first step to do?
I think the most important thing, especially also for Germans again, is to actually think about what will happen and to actively contribute to discussions of where we want this to go, the development. So I think not a lot of people are actually thinking about what could happen, and like in the positive but also in the negative. And I think the future can be very positive, but only if everyone also has their opinion about it and contributes to that and tells the government also what to do. And then in the smaller, and then I think companies are a big force that is like below governments and a bit apart from governments, but they're a big force and they can reach a lot of people. So that's why I think it's also important to start that within a company.
Mm-hmm. And so how would you start it in the company? So if you were an HR manager, having the decision power to do that.
So on the one hand, I definitely take a user-centered design approach. So I definitely go and say, so these are the things we're already doing, and talk to people and see, like, you don't have to talk to a lot of people. You can talk to 5 people that took a course, ask them what was good, what was bad, how did it fit with their work, ask them maybe again or even just start asking them a year after they took the training, because often it's also not transferable or they'll just forget. So really stay on track and then see, okay, what can we change? And then build a prototype, let people use it, do the training, the new training method, or I don't know, it won't be a seminar anymore maybe, but like maybe something on the job, maybe something with technology, because you can scale that as well. And then ask them again and see what can we refine. Is this a good way or not? And if not, then just leave it and then just build something new. So don't be afraid of just testing it out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how much time do you think that this takes?
That doesn't take a lot of time. You can do that in for the first prototype, that could be done in 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah. Let's quickly brainstorm. Yeah. What would be a good prototype? Maybe some hints.
So I'm building something like that. So no, but I definitely think something on the job is good. I definitely think that peer-to-peer things work very well. I mean, that's stuff you probably already know as an HR guy, but do you really have that in your training? That's the other question. I think that it's not so much about the specific content, but a bit more of a focus of being okay with who you are, that you really go and help the individuals be okay with who they are, because only then, if they're mentally stable and and sort of content, only then you can then they can adapt to change, because otherwise they'll just freak. Yeah. So it's more about those skills. Also seeing if you have enough of these soft skills, reflection, mindfulness things in your training, because I think a lot of people don't really value it as much yet. Yeah. Individuals, yes, but not companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for that. So let's quickly summarize it. So what I took away now from our discussion is that for sure we have to change, because change is inevitable, since there are many things changing around us. But what I like about this computer-human interaction is that it doesn't sound really like it's something we should fear, but it's more something we should encounter and actively approach. And it's not that difficult to start it, right? Mm-hmm. And there are 3 words that I read a lot of times: just do it. And I think that's something, especially HR being usually more a bit on the reactive side, should really encounter and not take for granted that the change will always be done automatically, but they have to actively shape it, right?
Yeah, I wrote down one thought about that too. Because HR is always mostly reactive, and I thought, well, if these changes happen, then they'll have freaked out people, like they do. If you have a team and then you cut half of the people of the team, then afterwards you have training for the other half that's still there, because they sort of freaked out, but you sort of know that before, but you don't do anything before. You're just we'll just do the change and then we'll cope with all the people that are stressed out by the change. Like, why don't you just like be proactive and work with the people first and then change things?
Yeah, good point. Now, coming towards the end, regarding limits, things where it doesn't work. Do you have any precise example?
Well, HCI sort of always works because one part is also seeing when technology does not fit. So I don't think technology is always the right solution, but that's part of HCI, is looking when do we need human-human interaction and when is human-computer interaction not the right solution.
When, for example?
I do think if it go like psychological, like deeper psychological work with a person should be done by a person, at least for a very long time. I think this will be the case. I also think like just feeling part of the company, like this feeling of being connected, having this like social group in the company, that's something very valuable that can keep people very motivated if that works out well. So that's very human things, yeah. And that's like some parts of communication should be done from a human to a human or other humans. So like leaders, managers should sometimes it's fine to send an email or a Slack post, but sometimes they need to sit down with their people and feel the room, sort of like, and see what energies are coming, and then be proactive again and ask and be like, what's your concern, and not wait for people to come or not come and then just get frustrated.
So our first episode of What's Next is coming to an end. What's next on What's Next? So stay tuned for news on trends, technologies, and insights in HR and beyond. Thank you, Anouk, for joining. It was really interesting to talk to you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.